here we go. Just needed your tap.
All right. So we're ready to hear from ACE Academy. If you representatives can come forward.
While they're coming up, do we know, is there any financial issue with this school? So it's just the low performing? Okay.
This won't work because it's like PDF, so you just can do like that.
Afternoon.
All right.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us. I'm Lila Minot. I'm the Executive Director of ACE Academy.
I am Dr. Bridget Reese, Principal at ACE Academy.
Our school is in its 6th year of operation, and we're here to present our status as it relates to low performing.
So during the 2018-2019 school year, we had a lot of academic successes. We improved our communication school-wide. We implemented common lesson plans for all of the teachers. We implemented a diverse and rigorous ELA curriculum in K-8, that's Wit and Wisdom. We have coaches for all the teachers, instructional coaches, both that are in-house and some that are contracted to come in. We increased our performance level from a 41 to a 51, and we met our expected growth. We have a new head of schools, Dr. Terry Klein, and myself as principal, and we had a very high retention of teachers and staff. We included a lot of professional learning with our teachers and staff. We have ongoing training in building a positive culture. Our teachers and our coaches use Teach Like a Champion and Get Better Faster. We also use that for classroom management, the Teach Like a Champion. We share the videos with the teachers. We did skits and role plays with them. We have a curriculum specialist, Dr. Johnson, that comes in and works with just kindergarten through 3rd grade on engaging activities with the students. And we also had curriculum training for the math, the Wit and Wisdom, and the NTN, as well as our entrepreneurship program. So along with that, we also had a lot of professional development that was ongoing. So what we started the year off with, the social and emotional, the Wit and Wisdom, Eureka Math, NTN. We also did continuous training throughout the school year. So we had the Wit and Wisdom coaches come back. The NTN math coach is there monthly. We have in-house restorative practices that does workshops with the teachers and the students because we want the teachers to also be restorative within themselves to teach them their social emotional learning. We increased our incentives for our students. We started using Kickboard, which goes along with the financial literacy, financial learning, so the students would get their paychecks and then they'd be able to spend on intangible and some tangible objects. We offer quarterly rewards for the students. We have students that are also running businesses that get to showcase at our festivals, the Winter Fest, some other after-school activities. And we also use the NESA's evaluation system for our teachers, so it's very consistent with how we check on their instructional practices. We do regular walkthroughs and give feedback immediately on those.
And then for our staff culture and our student culture, we have enhanced different prizes. We do student announcements every day that are actually led by our students. We do birthday shout outs. And then, like she said, our students are advertising their businesses throughout the school.
We use lots of assessments for the learning. Every classroom, every teacher does exit tickets and other formative assessments. Our MTSS program is very strong this year. We started Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions in September. We have data meetings with our teachers who in turn have data meetings with their students, and we also used iStation, NCNC, and the check-ins for assessments. So with our MTSS and daily interventions, like I said, we started Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions in September. They are pulled into groups based on their student data. We use the progress monitoring in iStation, and those groups are fluid. So just recently, some students graduated out of Tier 2 to just get their in-class interventions, and we built those into the schedule. So students aren't pulled from their regular instructional time, but this is built in where all students are able to receive interventions. So our North Carolina school report card data, as you can see, we've improved every year as far as the growth and proficiency. I won't read all of the percentages, but unless you want me to.
No, it's okay.
So based on what we've seen over the last 3 years, these are our goals for this year to increase our proficiency and our growth. And our goal for this year is to be at a C on our NETS report card, at least.
I think we'd all like to see it go a little bit quicker, but you are making decent progress as you go through and look, how your performance grade scores have gone, to try to get you up to that 60 and then hopefully higher from there. But,
Right.
I was looking through some of the stuff, looks like of your students, only 14.7% of students entering your sixth grade classes are proficient. And you have 57.1% of your students are economically disadvantaged. Both, that incoming student readiness is a lot lower than the state. And then your percentage of economically disadvantaged is higher than the state's. And so, I see a lot of reason for optimism in the future if things keep on the trajectory that they are.
We feel that way too. And we know there are areas that we need to work on with our subgroups. This year, going as strong as we did into MTSS, we're already seeing some growth in our iStation data, and our check-in 2 data wasn't available when we sent this in, but on our check-in 2 data, we got back ELA last week, and every grade in ELA went up on their proficiency.
Yeah, it looks like the data overall, if I'm reading it right, is moving in the right direction. Let's see. That chart was really small. So you were you were D in 2017-18 and D in 2018-19, 38, 41, 51. Performance score, growth, 73, 69, 83. I mean, all those pieces seem to be going the right direction. And there was no financial issues that we know.
No.
I would say just keep working. So did you exceed growth last year?
We met growth. We exceeded in math.
Okay, you just by a hair missed it.
Yeah, they were up.
You were
pretty
close.
high.
Really
They were
close.
close
Yeah.
to exceeding.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I would just say keep that press on, and hopefully you'll get out of the woods here. Any other questions or concerns for this group? Yeah, I mean, trend lines are looking in the right direction. Did you tell us what the enrollment was? Let's see, 110 this year.
410.
Oh, I'm looking at the wrong. That's an older. Okay, so 410 right now.
Yes.
And what was last year?
400. We've been approximately 400 for the past 3 years, and
And that's that like building capacity or whatever?
correct. Yes.
I mean, that's good. Anytime with the enrollment is not changing. Where did you what led you to choose the Teach Like a Champion, Get Better Faster stuff and the curriculum that you chose?
For the
Just curious.
Written Wisdom ELA curriculum, we looked at a few. We looked at Ready, we looked at Written Wisdom. I think we looked at one more. And just as we sat them down and went through them as a team to see how rigorous they were, how diverse they were, We really like the Whitney Wisdom diversity in the textbooks or the content books that the students would be using. It was very multicultural, a lot of informational text, which is, we know is very needed for all students. So that's why we went with Whitney Wisdom. As far as Teach Like a Champion and Get Better Faster, we had all been to separate workshops and had seen those implemented for consistency. So that's why we went with those.
Good. Feel like you're doing a lot of the right things, at least in my opinion. All right. Any other questions? All right, keep it up. Hopefully you'll be out of low performing status if you can hit that C and get high growth
Thank you.
this year.
That's our plan.
Be
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you.
Check-in data looks pretty solid for a first round. All right, Hollowass Pony.
Oh, is this a presentation?
Just so they can see it, it's pretty much redundant. No,
Good afternoon.
Hey. Good
I was
afternoon.
wondering, they got the letter 3 weeks ago, and I said, man, I usually come in October. So, hopefully you've read over what we sent about a week and a half ago. And pretty much my slideshow will be pretty much a lot of things repetitive. Going over our academic growth the last 3 years, we met expected growth, 2017, 18, and 19. Our overall, when you go to look at it, our overall school grade last year was a 40 without any retests. And we had ELA was 40 and the math was 43. And as you look, we had a slight decline over the last 3 years in ELA, and I can attribute that to putting more emphasis on math. You notice the math back in 2017 was 9%. Now it's gone to 43. And the thing what we did with that was that we had a school-wide program. We put emphasis all the way from PE classes to music and art on math, because we know the more kids see it, the more kids understand it, and they can also see the relevancy. As you see, our Native American scores, we're about 75% Native American, and their scores overall was only 1 point higher than the other groups. Our forms of our assessments that we use, check-in, iRead, and M-class are used for our diagnostics, so we can get the initial readings of where kids are, and then the benchmarks. Our areas of growth that are expected for this year will be the 3rd, 4th, 7th, and 8th grade math and reading, as well as Math 1 and English 2. Our areas of challenge are the 5th and the 6th grade reading and math. 6th grade reading and math, we only had one child out of, I believe, was about 12 to pass the test in the 4th grade math. And we also had some struggles with the 5th grade. The exceptional children, that's another challenge of ours. We have at least 25%, actually it's around 27% of the children at the school have an IEP. I know that's a very high number. And out of that, about 2/3 of the children have not only a disability intellectually, but they also have speech problems. So they're seeing two sides as a resource teacher when they pull out, but they're also seeing a speech therapist. For our enrollment has been pretty consistent in the past 2 years or so. As you see, that 2016-17 is 155, and it dropped to 135 in 2017 to 18. But by the end of that year, we were at about 147 or 48 students. And as you see, last year we were at 152 in our first 20 days. This year we were at 150, but we're presently at 156 students. And we have some more students whose parents are interested in enrolling them in our school. Staffing, we're fully staffed. Out of our, as you see, there are 13 teaching positions. We have 11 of them have a license. And out of the 13 positions, everybody in those areas has a degree in that field that they're teaching, which is the first time in a long time at the school. And there are 5 members who are first-time employees of education, period, as far as public school teachers that were hired in August. And we have 1 new staff member due to a teacher resigning at November the 1st. We have 1 that was hired by the middle of November to replace him, and he's in place. Staff development, we came in contact about a year and a half ago with the Hill Academy, and we've been doing a lot of things with them, and we've been also sending teachers to their state conferences of their field, their teaching area. And they have been receiving instructional training from the instruction support coach. Our instructional support coach is a retired superintendent who is also assistant superintendent of instruction for a school system. They will also have been a principal at every level of education, as well as they have 7 years of experience in teaching math. Professional learning communities occur each week. Instruction support, mainly is talking about strategies being used, looking at data as to where the students are at that point, and then looking at the things about interventions. They are done because we're a small school. We have a K-1 classroom, we have a 1-2 classroom, and then we have 3 classrooms in the 3rd through 5th, 3 classrooms 6 through 8, and we have 4 in the high school as far as for the subject areas of social studies, math, English, and science. And the central focus of the model are always instructional practice and student support activities. The teacher attendance is only concerned with 1 staff member, and that's due to some health problems, except for maybe a few minor days where teachers were out sick. Basically, when teachers are out, it's staff development. For the student support, we presently are forming the MTSS. As we got this letter, we also got the document to talk about the things that we were doing with that we were sending 3 people to be trained, Ms. Rhonda Harrell, and they did it last week in Wilson. And we're setting up training for this week to continue that with those 3 people. As a matter of fact, Ms. Harrell is scheduled to come down to our school this week to also talk to the leadership team. The school improvement team, as say here, tries to meet at least twice a month on Wednesdays. Our students, unless there's something else going on that we have to change the schedule, our students get out at 1 o'clock on Wednesdays, every Wednesday, in order for us to be able to do staff development and have school improvement meetings. You also asked about what are we doing about students as far as like the social, emotional things of that sort. We have an agreement with the Rural Health Group where we have one of their technicians spends the whole day on Mondays at our school. And they also contacted if we need any emergency needs. We also have a psychologist that may be referred to them. When you asked about social emotional, we actually are getting staff development twice a month. We have a person that is a psychologist who has been hired for the year to do staff development with the staff all the way through May. And matter of fact, we're looking at doing the contract with her again next year, and she's coming back to try to put some things to further that. We also have a student service assistant who deals with things with the counseling side, as well as high school things when you look at kids with scholarships, college, programs over at the community college, things of that sort. Because prior to getting there, we didn't have any kids. Tied to my tenure, we had no kids that were on the local community college campus. Now we have kids taking courses over there, especially in the CTE area. In order to build a school culture, we created a PTA. We call it the PTT, Parent Teacher Team. And we have awards day programs. We'll have one on this Friday. Parents and publics are invited. And they incorporate more academic field trips, because the field trips, before I approve them, they must have an academic purpose. And they also must have goals set up and what the students are going to accomplish by going to this field trip. We've also invited more consultants in the classroom. We had in the different areas, regardless of the grade levels, whether it's in the science, business areas, social studies, things of that sort. We've also increased more staff development for the opportunities. The Hill Academy in Durham, we've been doing things with them since spring of last year. As a matter of fact, we have some teachers that'll be going there soon for some more staff development in their areas. And this is one of the groups that actually helped us with the math a lot last year. They helped us a lot with techniques and things like that the staff brought back that were sent on the staff development. We also have Student and Employee of the Month recognition and monthly school boards, which we'll have that tonight. And we introduced clubs in middle school, at the middle school and the high school level this year. Strategies for improvement. We have our tier groups that are formed for centers and intervention groups during the first 3 weeks of the year. We use M-Class data, we use the iReady data, but we also look at the information we have from previous year, the the previous year EOG scores or either EOC scores to use to form those groups. We started after-school tutorials January the 20th for grades 2 through 10, and we also hired tutors back for grades K through 11 in October in the area of reading and math. And these tutors work for 3 days a week, each in the area of reading and math. And students are provided the service between 9 to 2:30. And when the time that they're assisted depends on what time they have certain courses. For instance, we make sure that we also follow the law with the students, especially K through 8, about the recess, because we know that they must have so much physical activity. We hired an instructional assistant, instructional support coach. We did this back in September. And the way we were able to do that, we received the CSI grant in the amount of $95,000. They came down and visited the school back in November, and they told us, based upon what they saw and how we were, what we were doing with the funds, they told us we're gonna definitely make sure that you get some more money for next year. And they came back, they gave us $117,000 already been approved for next year. And we're gonna look at doing the same thing with the instruction support coach. Also, too, as you see there, we've already put in and received that they have acknowledged receipt. We're in the second wave of the schools that'll be trying to obtain the IPG grant, which is $500,000. And we've already had the needs assessment. We had that in the CSI grant have a needs assessment done for the school. So they've already done that. So they have that to, once we get the template within the next couple of weeks, that they can already start putting things into place because they have a lot of the information they needed.
What is the IPG grant? What is it?
The Innovative Partnership Grant. For those of you that are kind of like old like me, I'll be 60 in a few months. It used to be called a School Improvement Grant. Whereas they used to have $980,000, but now, I guess people say you don't need that much. But you can get $500,000, and it's for 3.5 years. And when you get this, you have to have one of 9 partners that are approved by the state. RTI Educational Service is one of these groups. Right now, from what I found out of the 20 schools that were approved for this grant, they wrote 9 of the schools' grants, and they received them. And so when we get that, it's be about $130,000 from what I went through, what they would need for their services each year. The $370,000 allows us to get a full-time, paid with benefits and everything, instructional coach. It also allows us to also get a person in there that deals more with the social and emotional, at least for about 20 hours or so a week. We also are going to be doing some other things with it that we wouldn't possibly be able to do through normal state funds or either local funds. And so we get that, it's going to really set the school really what it needs to be. And speaking of goals, you saw what our report card was. Our goals are to make at least 50 or more in each one of the areas this year. And one of the things we are going to do in math is that we will be retesting. I haven't told the teachers, even though I have Ms. Rogers here with me today, they don't know that we're going to be retesting that. We're going to hit it hard and heavy after the children get out from the first wave from school for June the 5th. That's our last day. That next week they will hit a very intense remediation intervention. So academics first.
A question that I have is, and I'm sure you've probably looked at this 100 different ways.
Mm-hmm.
You meet growth, but I mean, you're meeting it, right around the, you were a plus 0.73 and negative 0.82 and negative 0.68. And so you're meeting that growth, and your grade level proficiency is staying pretty stagnant, as you look at it. So 16, 17, it was 27.2, then it was 29.2, then 28.1. What do you think you've got to do to see some of the growth that you're seeing translate into some proficiency gains?
Where I look at it, and it'll definitely be showing up even more so this year, was that when we looked at our K through 5, that was where we had issues because we found this a lot of foundational skills were not reaching the kids. So I went back and looked through the data. But for the last pass, especially say in 3 through 5, we've had some pretty much consistency. And we've had much stronger teachers in those areas during the past 3 years. And I can definitely tell you one place, if you look at our 6 through 8, our 6 through 8 exceptionally strong. If you look at the growth that those children made, they went from sometimes being probably less than 10% in math to going up in the 40s. And they did that within a 2-year period. But that's because they had a strong foundation there of about 3 to 4 years of consistently the same teachers and the teachers who were working together, who have formed a good, strong team. And that's the one thing that you didn't have. I believe when I looked at it, since 2000 and something like 15, in the elementary from K through 5, you only have one teacher there out of about the 4 teachers that have been there total between those 2 grade levels in K through 2. And then prior to 2017, you had at least probably about 4 teachers. But now they're having consistency with the staff. And then everybody is teaching with a license in their field. They actually have a degree in that area. And that's, when I check back, I couldn't see it. I know I couldn't see it since 2014, where everybody had a degree in the field they were teaching in. And that makes a lot. You know, that means a lot. Now, the other thing is, definitely, as I said, we have a lot of kids that have an IEPs, that have a lot of struggles. We have a lot of transfers that come over from a neighboring school system. And they come with a lot of deficiencies with the IEPs. I mean, I'm just telling the truth. So we have to overcome that. And we've had children, for instance, the 8th grade, which had a group of kids where quite a few of them had come over from that school about 4 years earlier and had IEPs. The 8th grade had almost half of their children pass the math test, and almost half of those kids in that had an IEP for an intellectual disability. But they had this same teacher for 3 years, and it made a big difference. The teacher grew too. She was a new teacher, but as they grew, she grew. So you get a twofold win there. The students succeed, but then you have a teacher that's increasing their skills.
I just think this school is so important to this area.
Oh, it's
where
big
you're
time.
at, you know, because of the heritage components
Yes, sir.
that you have, and
Yes, sir.
and that's why I really want to see the school succeed. And I mean, you're meeting growth, and you know, I think you got to keep on, and I think you've identified a lot of things, and it's been nice. I mean, you've been you're in your 4th year now,
This is 3rd year.
3rd year. I mean, because I know there've been a lot of turnover as
Well-
far as the school leader going.
Yes, sir. Well, you know, I said that I'll be 60 soon. So, you know, I'm getting to be old kind of this, but I promised the school I was going to fully retire. But I promised the school, because I am a product right down that area. My great-grandfather actually comes from there, that I told them I would give him at least 2 more years, because I wanted to see the school succeed. And, you know, when I talked to y'all, I told Ms. Rogers, I said, he'll be sitting at the front when you walked in front of my truck crossing the street. I said, you know what, but I like the way you do things. At least we know where we stand. And I like your support. But the one thing about the school is that you have to have high expectations. And I brought that, because I told them everybody knew me in the school, in the area, as being a teacher. And I taught over half the parents in the school, in high school, 20 years ago. And they knew me as an administrator, that I don't accept, you know, low-level standards. And that people remember you not about the money you have or the car you drive, but what you do in life. So I don't ever want a child to be looking up the road 20 years and to say, you know what, he didn't do anything for me. And I'm serious about that. I'm serious as my dad and mom. And we had that from a lot of people. Instead of thinking about positions and moving place to place and doing all this stuff, the schools and children would be a lot better.
Get ready to preach a sermon up there.
I am a deacon in the church, so, you know.
Amen.
Amen. All right. Thank you, Mr. Bell. Seems like with meeting growth, keeping your enrollment stable, discipline seems to be steady. You just gotta continue to push
Yes, sir.
those scores up.
And at the end of this year, we will have tripled the fund balance since I came there.
That's
It's
great.
gone from 130 something. This year it may go up to 400,000.
Are you guys having any impact on Halifax County schools?
Yes,
are they
we
looking
are.
at some of the things you're doing and partnering
I
with them?
tell you, really, one of the main things we impact Halifax County, and especially Hollis Elementary and Pittman, is the fact that we have a large IEP population. Quite a few of the parents, since I have been there, have brought their kids there because they found out that we meet the kids' needs. And the thing about it, I put this the litmus test to the teachers. I said, do unto that child what you would have somebody do unto your child. That's your litmus test. And you know what? If you don't address that student's needs now, when they get to be about 25 and they have to make a living and get some money, and they don't have the skills to get a job that they can support themselves, they might come and visit you one night through your window. I mean, you just have to look at it frankly. If you want a community where that can thrive and where people, you know, are prepared to go out and work and to be able to support themselves, you got to have a school. I mean, I don't care if a kid does have an IEP, but you got to make sure you get them the way they are, where they can be.
You have students taking Math 1, right?
Yes, sir. And
What's your proficiency rate in Math 1?
last year we didn't have, but I believe it was one kid.
Oh, only one.
But
Okay.
this year, that's the reason why you've seen math has been targeted. You notice it gone in 2 years, it went from 9 to 43. Because I had to bring in people, a retired teacher who was also a principal last year. She worked a lot with the kids from grades 2 and then even some of them in the middle school. This year, I've had her back, but the instruction support coach said also has a very strong background in math. And the Math 1, this group of kids should do much better because this group of kids had 3 years of consistent teachers. And that was the group last year I said that half of the kids had an IEP, but almost half of the kids passed the test.
Do you know what Halifax County's Math 1 proficiency rate is? Have you tried
I tried to find it, but I couldn't get it.
It's on the website.
Yeah, I go and look
They're
at it.
less
But
than 20%
I
proficient
know.
in Math 1.
And you know, really, when you look at it, that's a thing of the area. And I can say that having been the principal at Warren County High also, and interim principal in Northampton County at a high school, the one thing about math teachers, a lot of turnover, especially at the middle school and high school, a lot of turnover. And it's real hard to get the ones, let's put it, it's real hard to get a quality math teacher in place because they run down to Raleigh here or they run to the places like Granville County where they can pay the subsidies and, you know, the supplements and things of that sort. It's very competitive. I mean, and I can't fault them for wanting to do better for themselves, but that's the world we live in, being realistic. As the kids say, keeping it 100. That's the truth,
Thank you.
sir.
All right. All right, thank you, Mr. Bell. All right, next is IDEAL, Institute for the Development of Young Leaders.
Good afternoon. My name is Yvette Monroe, and I am the founder and chief executive officer of the Institute for the Development of Young Leaders. With me is Dr. Tom Miller, and he's serving our school community as the chief instructional leader. And he will make the presentation, and I'm here.
Good afternoon, members of the board. It's been a few years since I've been here, so thank you for the opportunity. So let me just start with saying my role there started about 4 weeks ago. The current principal who you met last year, Ms. Wilson, she is close to retirement age and contacted the state and realized that she was some months short of her full retirement. So she had to make a quick decision. So me working with the school for the last couple of years, it seemed like a great opportunity for me to continue the work that they've done over the last couple of years and be the academic leader at the school. Last year, is it just this button?
Yeah, it's the bottom, pointing down.
There we go. So last year, the school basically maintained its GLP score. It was 44 the year before. It rose by 1. They missed exceeding growth by 0.7 points. So right there, so that's a third year in a row that they've had an increase, but not quite at the exceed mark, and that was the goal for the year. And our areas for improvement is always being a transient inner city school is to improve the student readiness. And right now we're only at 19.7%. So that's one goal is to improve our K2. And our exceptional children's program, our population is growing annually. not just with students with academic needs, obviously, but also social and emotional support. And so the school did a great job, but we have multiple full-time staff members right now who address emotional support with specific behavioral programs. And we really need to focus on master learning. So one of our key goals and our strategies this year, or since I've come on board, is to answer 3 questions every day. What are students going to learn? How do we know that they've learned it? And what are we going to do if they do? And what do we do if they don't? So we've moved away from a monthly assessment system, and we're moving away from a weekly assessment system where we need a formative assessment per every class. So that's our next step in the process after we made sure that lesson plans are clear and teachers clearly understand the content that they're teaching on a daily basis. So that just goes down to the execution of the education plan. So any questions about that?
What's the assessment for readiness that you use?
Yeah, so there was assessments used, and in asking the teachers, because it wasn't there when it was given, it seemed to be it was created by the teacher. So that's one of the goals of me and the other academic list leader this month, is to figure out what assessment, whether it's using the check-ins, we have access to Ready, is to provide something before we start to prepare for the last 3 months of school. And those scores are in a couple of slides. So there was 3 goals set by the organization at the start of the year. 1 was to exceed academic growth. 1 was to retain greater than 85% of the students from day 1 to the next year. And that was just some data I was looking at. 3 years ago, the school's withdrawal rate was over 35%. And last year, they decreased it to less than 10. So that's making a big difference, keeping your own students year by year. And then last but not least, to retain 85% of the qualified teachers and the staff members. Strategies around it, I've talked to you a few. The classroom exit ticket and the over-the-shoulder assessment. So as you know, as some of you are school leaders, just walking around the room and inspecting what you expect, making sure students are actually following through with work, getting through our common standards weekly assessment. And we need to improve on our interventions for children. That's one weakness that we have for sure, is make sure every teacher has better interventions to support the students at the academic level that they're at. And we've been working through depth of knowledge and Teach Like a Champion. One of my goals is to make sure we're all rowing in the same direction. So there's been a lot of professional development for the teachers. Whether or not it all makes sense and we're moving in the right direction is what I'm currently assessing. We have a goal of weekly touches for every teacher. There's 3 of us who provide observation and feedback. And the goal is to help them through what's the one thing that we can get the maximum growth out of that teacher. Some of them are working on too many things. So our first month we worked on praise and proximity with our teachers and greeting students at the door. Goal 2 strategy was to just improve the programs that we have in-house and to ensure that we're serving the needs of all children. Like as I mentioned, we have a heavy population of at-risk students, also with students with social and emotional challenges. Over the last 2 months, a lot of our students have been displaced based upon the housing area that they live in. And so some of our students are just maybe getting back into their homes since Christmas this upcoming week. So it's a definite challenge that we have, identifying where all of our students are every day and making sure that they get a great education on a daily basis. And lastly, to increase the teacher support. This was a conversation we've had. I was going through the teacher roster. We have not had continuous teachers stay in their EOG teaching positions. So for example, less than 50% of the current staff were teaching in EOG classrooms last year. So we have to retain those that we're building. So we're creating a really strong core of teachers, putting them through some teacher leadership academy programs, and really starting to paint them in the picture of what the future of the school will be. And that's helping out. And we also, the staff this year built in additional 20% teacher planning time. They have a 10-hour day, One of the things they did this year is they made sure that they had multiple times per day to do their lesson plans and to catch up.
The teachers are, what time do they clock in and clock out?
Yeah, so they're in at 7:30. They're out at about 4-ish, 4:15. It all depends. Some of them work a little bit over. Yeah, I mean almost 5:30 for some, if they work the after-school program.
Oh, okay.
It's a long day. Yep. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. I'm going the wrong way, Ashley. Up and down is wrong for me. So these were the benchmark scores that I pulled from the teachers. Again, it was not a common assessment. So it's our goal by the end of this month to have something consistent that
So
we
this
make
is
sure that
teacher
everybody's on the same
created?
page. Teacher created. Some of them used quizzes or Quizlets. Some use NC check-ins. Some used the Ready book. So we're gonna make sure we have an external created, consistent grades 3 through 8 assessment by the end of the month. So that'll help us plan for March, April, and May at a higher level. This is just a little bit about the population. 370 students, 90% are economically disadvantaged, 98% students of color, almost 20% is homeless. We ride buses for pretty much all of them, and there's the staff adult to student ratio right now. What questions might you have?
What's the biggest challenge right now?
Well, I mean, students are the constant and adults are the variable. So
For that,
it's our behavior as adults that are going to dictate everything. So we're really strong at building relationships. We're not experts at accountability and inspecting what we expect. So that's been a big part of it this year, is that we're not just going to say we're going to do something, we're actually going to do it, and we're going to check to make sure that you did do it. And if you don't know how to do it, we're going to teach you how to do it well. So that's a big part in my first 30 days has been that. And then also, just getting back to the vision of the school and the original purpose, and staying true to the values, and just really making sure everybody understands them, and working, but not. Sometimes we accept less for some reason. We settle for less, right? We want more, but we settle for less. So we don't. It's just not. We can't do it. The kids' lives are too important to settle for less.
I think additionally, a challenge has been maintaining staff that we invested in training, and then staff did not always stay from one year to the next.
Is this going to be something, Dr. Miller? Are you going to be doing this long term, or is this just trying to get a grasp of what the? I mean, I don't want to get too personal into your
No,
life
it's fine.
here, but just curious as
No,
to
it's a really good
how
question.
this plays in with some of the other stuff you've been doing in the charter school meeting.
Sure. No, it's a good question, Mr. Walker. So the goal is that in the next 30 days, we're going to have the advertisement for the new instructional leader. And so that's part of my responsibility as well, is to evaluate current staff and to give IDYO a plan and a real strong leader. We've already had a few people inquire. So now it's just about having conversations about what this leader needs to be able to do, because it's a really hard job, as you all know. You've all sat in that seat. And so to be the instructional leader of that school and to work through the growth. If you look at the growth of the school, it's been growing by almost 30% every year enrollment-wise. So there's a lot of variables. Ms. Monroe talked about the teacher turnover and the investment in them, but it didn't work out, and then making sure we're staying true to the promises of the school. So my contract is through the end of the year. I believe that's what you asked me. But the expectation is that we're going to have someone identified within the first 90 days of that. That's the hope. Are you interested? So I'll cross your name off.
I would be.
You'd be great. Well, your wife might be really great. She runs a school, so
She does well.
that's right.
She does well. And you used to call me Dr. Walker. You throw a mister on me here.
Well, that's
But
true.
it's
I deeply
okay.
apologize for that.
The state bar won't let you call me doctor.
That's right.
So do you anticipate these changes that you're making are going to create more teacher turnover? And if it does, how are you going to counter?
What are the exact changes that you're referencing? The change in me?
No, yes, and the changes that you're gonna do more of the NC check-ins or the iReady
Mm.
versus the ones that they create on their own.
Yeah, I don't find
Sounds
that.
like you're gonna hold the staff a lot more.
Yeah,
accountable.
and you know, I haven't found one teacher who's had a problem with it. I think they want to be supported. But when we don't always check what we ask them to do, like my son, he's 7. If I don't check back on him, he's not going to do what I ask him to do, right? He's going to wait to see if I actually mean it. So we've had vast improvement. We actually had a Title I audit the other day, which was my first ever, which was fantastic, by the way. Anyway, and everything went really well, and they were very, very impressed by that, and by just what they saw from a relationship standpoint. And so we're there. The foundation is there. It's just a matter of making sure that we're all moving in the right direction at the same time, and we're not working as individuals. We're working as a team. So I don't expect more, but there's only 2 ways to improve a school, right? Either improve the adults you have, or to get new ones. I mean, it's so, one of the two has to happen in order for the school to get out of this continuing low performing list, because we don't want to be here. We love you all, but we don't want to see you every year.
How long have you had co-located mental health services, and what has the impact been that you've noticed on the student body?
This is our second year with an ESL, social and emotional learning, SEL, unit, and we had one last year, and we added a second one at the beginning of this year and a third one in December. And it has been really exciting to see those professionals helping our teachers understand how to work with children who are struggling with social and emotional learning and emotional regulation deficiencies. And I think that part of what has happened with turnover with teachers is that they weren't skilled to support the level of need that we saw. And so I do not expect turnovers to continue, because I think we've now put in place qualified mental health professionals who are not only doing the work, but teaching the teachers how to do the work themselves and how to look at it in a more holistic approach.
They also do stuff for adults.
The social and emotional learning, yeah, so they also support our adults in the building who also may need some learning and some ideas about how to regulate their own emotions and deal with their own traumas from being in school.
So one of the goals of the school originally was to move to a K-12. It wasn't part of the charter application, but it is something that we bring forth to you all to consider. There are 21 8th grade students who we believe, based upon the relationship we've had with them for years, would benefit from staying at IDYL and allowing the school to grow to a K-12 learning organization. So that was something that we had put forth to the Office of Charter Schools also this week.
Yeah, I think it's something that you think we'll be looking at that next month in the amendments? Okay. Can you send in, do we have like 8th grade data? Or
The 8th grade, like the benchmark data?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was there.
Well, I know, I saw the, that was the teacher,
right, the teacher made? Yeah, I could
Yeah,
send
I
that
meant
in.
last
What
year's- I guess
was the?
last year's 7th and 8th grade data?
Yeah, that'd be a really strong thing to look at, and also how many are the same students from last year, and I can work on that and have it to the office
I think that'd be
in the
helpful,
next day or
'cause
so.
that's a pretty big
If it's not
ask
in there already, I'll
for
have
a
to look.
continually low performing school to
Mhm.
request a grade level extension. so.
Yes, sir. I agree.
Would it be in line with the one we discussed this morning where it was approving year by year by year?
I'm sure it would
Yeah.
be. I mean, you're just,
Not looking to-
you're asking for one grade
You're
a
asking
year,
for one
right?
grade, not
Correct.
That's right. And yeah, and by law, because we're in the CLP, we have to
Yeah.
ask, otherwise it would
You have
just
to
be a
ask,
growth.
otherwise it's automatic.
That's right.
Yeah.
So in 2 years, we won't be on it, and then we won't have to ask anymore, hopefully.
Correct.
All right.
But the school is, I don't know if there was any, like with the finance piece, but it's by far the strength of the school, the operations and finance piece. So those are really good foundations we have.
Are there plans to maintain like the like the after school kind of component and or expand upon that or kind of
Oh, yes, sir. I'm sorry. It wasn't in the notes. We started Saturday Academy the first week back in, or second back week in January. So we also have a half-day Saturday school where there was almost half of the entire population of the school has been there every Saturday.
In the EOG grades.
Right, in EOG grades. And so what we want to do is make sure that what we taught during the week and what wasn't mastered gets retaught that week. So that's the plan that we're trying to make sure everybody moves, forward instead of just, following the textbook and going, having just more intentionality around it. Yeah, so that's also part of it.
There's a significant focus and belief that the more time children spend in school, the better for students. So we have no intention of doing away with the extended day program. We call it extended day because we allow our teachers and students, parents to understand that it is still an academic day and not an after-school program. There are teachers who are licensed, who are teaching smaller groups of students in that program, and they're using focused curriculum to double down on standard course of study.
okay.
Did you already, or do you plan to submit a 9 through 12, addendum to the charter? Just, again, it's gonna be hard enough, low performing, to request that and get that approved, but I think you'll need at least to have a detailed plan about what that high school is gonna look like over the next 4 years.
Yes, I have submitted the amendment for the expansion, and I believe, the board believes that this would further serve students that are coming out of Ideal in a way that allows for them to be successful as adults.
Off the top of my head, Dr. Walker, I believe that I put that 8th grade data in the high school plan, because I knew I did it, but I'll make sure it comes back out.
Okay, yeah, when we look at it next month, then it'll be in there.
All right. Well, keep
Thank you.
working, keep grinding. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right, is the right term.
Yeah, it's a long day. It's on Saturday too. All right, we are up to the NC Virtual Academy.
Caught up for school.
Yeah, we're grinding. We're moving.
These ladies, you want to be in charge of the, it's just a down.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Lauren Acom, and I am the new head of school for North Carolina Virtual Academy. I took over in this position at the end of July, so about 6 months on the job. And I also brought my academic leadership team with me, as we are all pretty new to this. Within my first 2 weeks on the job, I hired a new elementary school principal and a new middle school principal. And Miss Simmons is the one who has been around. She is our high school principal. So I've got Sarah O'Shea. She is our middle school principal who joined us from Chapel Hill Carborough City Schools. And Miss Kelly Shanahan. Kelly was our assistant principal at the middle school last year. And you will see in our presentation that last year's data showed that the middle school had the most growth and increase in proficiency. And so she came on board as our elementary school principal. So we will start by looking at our 18-19 school performance data. I have color-coded this chart for you. I'm not going to read all of the numbers for you. But as you can see, last year we took a dip in our proficiency from the 17-18 school year. Our increase that we did see in our performance came at the middle school level, our reading as well as middle school math and middle school science. Our students exceeded the state average in 6th, 7th, 8th grade reading as well as English 2, and we exceeded our LEA average in 3rd, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade reading, 6th grade math, and 8th grade science. When I look at data, one of the things I like to do is kind of break it down by cohort trends so that we're comparing more apples to apples instead of apples to oranges. So looking at the cohorts from 17-18 to 18-19, you will see that our 5th grade to 6th grade ELA cohort increased that proficiency by 14.9%, and our 5th grade to 6th grade math cohort increased the proficiency by 8.9%. 6th to 7th grade increased our English proficiency by 2.6%, and we increased our math proficiency by 18.4% from 6th to 7th grade. We also increased our 8th grade math to our Math 1 by 5.3%. And not included on this chart, we have increased our average ACT score to an 18, and we improved our graduation rate from 60 to 65%. This next chart shows our EVOS. So EVOS data has been one of my focus areas this year. I'm really teaching teachers how to use EVOS to drive their instruction based on predictions and previous year's growth. And so what you can see in this chart is that 4th through 8th grade reading as well as our English 2 met or exceeded growth. Every single one of our teachers that taught 4th through English 2 reading met or exceeded. We had 10 English teachers meet growth and 2 who exceeded growth. Our 8th grade science teacher met expected growth, and we only had 1 teacher last year. We have hired another to assist him this year. 7th grade math, we met expected growth, and the highlight of that is we had 1 teacher who taught pre-algebra as well as Math 1, and not only did she meet expected growth, but she also had 100% of her students achieved a 3, 4, or 5 on their state assessment, which even coming from a traditional brick and mortar charter school, even with those high flyers, it's pretty challenging to do that. And then Math 1, for the first year in school history last year, we met our expected growth. We had 4 teachers teach Math 1, 3 of them met growth, and 1 exceeded growth. And you can also see that our ACT composite continues to grow as well. So these next charts break down our academic growth as well as our performance grade by subgroups. Unfortunately, this data shows that we only met academic growth in the special ed subgroup, and we only met our performance grade in our Hispanic subgroup. So we have a lot of work to do as we are looking at our subgroup data. I do want to go through our student population data for this school year. We currently have 44% of our students who identify as a minority. 30% of those are African American and 7% are Hispanic. 65% of our student body identifies as economically disadvantaged students. 23% of our student population classify as special ed.
It's pretty high.
It's very high. It's much higher than the state average.
What's the state average of EC?
12 is the max.
12 to 15, so you're about double the state average for EC.
We are, yes. Our month 5 PMR, we had 2,717 students. We currently pull from 109 of 115 LEAs across the state, and we have students represented from 97 of 100 counties. So we currently don't have students in Pamlico, Hyde, or Tyrrell County. The majority of our students come from Wake County Public Schools and Charlotte-Mecklenburg. We currently, from those 2 districts, 20% of our student population are from those districts. And 67% of our students this year come from a traditional public school setting. So benchmark data. So we kind of put last year behind us, and we're moving forward. We're making changes, and we use NWEA's MAP assessment at the beginning, middle, and end of the year to measure growth. And what these charts really show is the instructional level of students. This was our beginning of the year data. Mid-year is still in progress, so we don't have that growth. It will be about another week of makeup tests. But what this says is that overall, 71% of our students are behind grade level in reading. So 34% are considered below basic that need urgent, immediate interventions. 37% of our students are basic and they need significant intervention. 24% are proficient and 6% tested at the advanced level. For math, 80% of our students are below grade level. They're either below basic or basic. 38% need urgent intervention. 42% need significant intervention. 15% is proficient, which we consider on watch. And then 4% are advanced or have mastered the standard. We get these percentages from the RIT score. It is an interval scale that measures student achievement. And so we use this when we are essentially creating our targeted instructional groups and matching where students are based on certain standards to their instructional level. In addition to the NWEA that we administer 3 times a year, we also do interim assessments twice a year. One of the big changes that I have made is last year and in prior years of the school, these interim assessments were teacher made. This year we have, we use SchoolNet, IXL, and released EOGs or EOCs to create these interim assessments. So these are given in Go Formative 2 times a year. They're tagged to a standard and they cover what has been taught so that it's a more realistic picture of where our students actually are. And the reason that we use these resources is we feel like they're strongly aligned with the standard course of study and they're much more rigorous. So the DOK level aligns more closely to what students are going to see on the end of the year assessment. And you can see what our mastery data looks like across the elementary school and the middle school. It's higher than we were last year. It's not as high as we would like to see, but we will continue to use this information to drive our instruction. After each NWEA and interim assessment, we lead teachers in conducting thorough data analysis of their students and where they are. So what they do is they create a table of specifications and then a standard analysis and an instructional plan. So they're looking at why students struggled on specific standards and then how they're going to reteach it, how they're going to change it to move forward. And they do a lot of that work in their weekly PLCs. We are really excited that our fall EOC results for the high school, we teach on a block schedule. We have received those and we are up in all areas. So for the fall, our Math 1, we had 52.38% of our students who scored a 3, 4, or 5. At the end of the year last year, only 33% of our students were proficient. So we are up 19.3% in Math 1, and the state average last year was 41%. Math 3, 36.7% of our students were proficient at the end of first semester. Last year it was 21.4%, so we are up 15.3 percentage points in our proficiency for Math 3. Biology, 42.8% of our students were proficient. Last year at the end of the year it was 35.6%, but after fall semester of last year, only 24% of our students were proficient. So from the end of the year, we're up 7.26%, but we're up about 18 percentage points from where we were at this time last year. And then we do not have our English 2 scores back yet.
That's great. That's very encouraging.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
With these benchmarks, are students doing them all like online on their own at their house?
So they are.
Yes and no. They are doing them online from their house. However, the teachers, we have what's known as breakout rooms. So the kids go into individual breakout rooms with their teacher, and it's synchronous. And they have to have their webcam on and their microphone on, so we can actually see that the kid is doing the assessment, not the parent, et cetera, since they're at their house, as well as not using other resources. We have the web lockdown browser feature on, so if they go out to try to research answers on the web, it kicks them out of the test, and the teacher has to go and restart it. Also, it makes them pace themselves. So if they go too fast just to get it done, it'll stop, and then it has to be reset for them to slow down, take your time, et cetera. So creating a real environment like they would if they show up.
And that is one of the changes that we've made this year, is for webcams to be on so that we can see students. They can't hide. We can build that relationship with them. And it's not just in our tests, but even in our day-to-day classes. So all webcams are on. Academic goals for the 1920 school year. We would like to obviously improve our state accountability rating. We would like to earn a C or better on our state report card, increase our graduation rate from 65 to 70%, ensure that 95% of our students participate in all testing for all subgroups. And I would like to note that for the first time in the school's history, this past fall, we had 100% participation in all subgroups for our state testing. Improve our overall EVOS growth indicators by at least 5%. And we would like to see every student achieve 1 year's growth as measured by the NWEA assessment. So what are some changes that have been made? We have reduced our classroom sizes. Our student-teacher ratio is now 20-1 for more targeted, individualized instruction. Last year, some of those class sizes were at a 50-1 ratio. So by reducing, we are really personalizing that learning. We have created weekly professional learning communities with the focus of data-driven instruction. We are doing a book study driven by data 2.0 and really working through that with our teachers. That's where we came up with our data digs following each interim and NWEA assessment, and teaching teachers how to focus on standard-based mastery. We've purchased resources like IXL and SchoolNet to ensure standard aligns. Rigorous resources are being used on our formative assessments, on our weekly exit tickets, as well as in the classroom. We have completely recreated our master schedule to allow for longer instructional time. As you can imagine, this was a bone of contention with many teachers, and that's why in the narrative that I provided, we did have significant amount of turnover at the beginning of the year. But what that's allowed us to do is bring people on board who buy into the mission and vision of this school, and who want the school to succeed, and are willing to put in the hard work. We also have built in an EOC prep course, as well as small group intervention and tutoring courses into our school day. So students are even pulled out of that 20-1, put into a small group to provide tutoring on specific areas. Every one of our math teachers has been placed on a standard observation cycle for this school year.
What does that look like? Like, how do you observe a teacher?
We go into their classroom just like you would in brick and mortar.
Just like you listen in, you can see all the kids doing their thing, and you hear what the teacher's saying.
Yep.
We can even join and interact with them. I mean, it's just like walking into a classroom face to face with them.
Yep.
Kind of.
So all of my experience has been in a brick and mortar, and I thought that it was going to be very different, but it's really not. I mean, like I can't. We would love for you to come join a class. Right. That's the only way I can say.
To me.
It's really unbelievable that,
And we're in the classroom weekly, so it's to the point of the students don't even realize we're there. It's like they'll say, hey, Ms. Simmons, and just keep on with what the teacher is doing, whether it's in chat or the microphone and stuff. So they're used to seeing us administrators in all the time.
And that was my next bullet point, is that we created a uniform walkthrough tool, and we use it every day. We have a shared folder that, I can go and pull out any teacher's walkthrough observation form or see what's going on, because these ladies are in the classroom all the time. And then we have also hired a math and reading curriculum specialist that work with our teachers on curriculum mapping, alignment, ensuring rigorous instruction, as well as classroom assessments to align with the state standards. We have done quite a bit of professional development this year, both face-to-face and virtually. Those topics have centered around curriculum, instructional mapping and alignment, data analysis, protocol, action planning and accountability, targeted differentiated instruction, DOK, questioning, John Maxwell, DISC training. We are participating in the racial equity training, phase 1 of that. And some of our teachers have attended various other professional development opportunities that they have found outside of the school.
Well, it sounds like you're really working on all the key areas, given where the weaknesses have been around growth. I mean, you just kind of have just buried us in a lot of data, and
That's
in a good
focus.
way. In a good way. I mean, that's the type of stuff that, given that growth has been such an issue, it seems like enrollment is not really an issue. Financial pieces, all the kind of operational pieces are there. It's just that year after year not making growth, and the EOC data looks really encouraging. I was curious about the biology, because we had a school say that their biology dropped. So I was curious, okay, is that everyone that took biology did across the state, because the test didn't change this year, so I wouldn't expect there to be, everyone went down, but you guys went up in both math and in bio. So that's, that piece is encouraging. It sounds like you're putting all the, doing the walkthroughs, norming, I would say, norming on your benchmarks. I don't think it's a real benchmark if teachers are creating it. And I would say that to everyone. It's not a benchmark if the teacher's creating it.
Right, and we are planning on moving to the NC check-ins next year.
Yeah.
Kind of when we were all brought on board, it was so late in the game. But that is, next year we will be doing the NC check-ins. It will look different for us, because when we test, we have between 14 and 18 different face-to-face sites set up through the state. So a lot more
sounds like a nightmare.
coordination goes into testing than even in the local or traditional brick and mortar. But I think it's important that we implement that so that we do have a more realistic understanding of where our students are performing.
Yeah, I think also I would want to do that, because it just you're able to sort out a lot of the kinks that are going to present themselves on
Right.
EOGs and probably hurt your scores.
Right.
Because if things don't run right, you'll just being forced to have to, set up all the testing sites and go through that whole process kind of as a dry run will be.
And one of the
it'd
things
be
we did this fall for the first time, and the irony in this kind of makes me laugh, is we're a virtual school, and up until this fall, we did all of our state assessments paper pencil. So I kind of came in and said, why? Why are we doing that? It was so smooth for our high school this fall that we're doing it K-12 in the spring. I think we'll continue to see success doing that as well.
Did you say you had 100% of your students test last year?
This fall, 100% of our high school students in all subgroups.
How many was that? How many students?
Half. So half of the school. So that was about 350.
Half of the high school.
Half of the high school took the test in fall.
It's pretty good.
Good.
And
Yeah.
that's, taking into account that they have to travel to a testing site. We do a lot of gas cards, Uber.
Now,
There's a lot that goes into
all
it.
of you worked there the previous year, or brand new to you're the only one? So all of you were administrators in brick and mortar schools? What led you to want to pursue this? Flexibility?
No. No. So I was previously at Eno River Academy. It's formerly Orange Charter School. I opened
Yeah.
the high school there. And while I was there, one of the initiatives that I did was started somewhat of a blended learning environment for students who were still struggling within our charter school. And as I did, I kind of just realized that there was a much larger need, and that there are many counties across the state that don't have the opportunity for school choice. And so a school like North Carolina Virtual Academy can essentially be a student's saving grace. It truly is the last chance for some kids. So that's kind of what led me here. Sarah.
Yeah, so I guess I was just ready for something different, and I like a challenge. I think you could probably imagine that the data in Chapel Hill Carver and where I was before is quite different, but Chapel Hill Carver was also very different from where I started my teaching career. So I was in Teach for America, started in Northampton County, and I really kind of missed that, like having a challenge and let's grow some kids and let's get in there and get our hands dirty. So yeah.
All right.
And then with me, I started with Chapel Hill Carver and then moved to the States. So I was an instructional director for North Carolina Virtual Public School. So I was originally part of creating the courses when it got started, and then became a director, and then moved over to help open the school. So.
And I was with the school when they opened as well, not in an administrative role. I was a teacher at the beginning. Moved into middle school to help them last year, and then came into elementary AA this year.
Well, y'all are talking about the right things, at least in my opinion. Sounds like you're focused on what matters. We got to meet growth. We need the virtual schools to meet growth. So hopefully that you'll be able to make some progress towards that goal this year.
Great.
Keep it up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one quick comment. I would think you tend to see a lot of student turnover. Is that true? And how does that affect
I think
scores?
I think we did in the first few years of the school, and Ms. Simmons or Ms. Shanahan can speak more to that. This year it's been, we've had the lowest turnover that we've had in the history of the school, so for the past 5 years. And I think some of that is that we now have students who have been with us year after year and know what to expect. And so we're not really seeing that turnover. Our enrollment is closed for the year because we're at capacity, and we had over 1,800 students on our wait list who were trying to get in, and some of those are even siblings, kids, or siblings of students.
That's a lot.
So that lower turnover should help also.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions? Thank you.
All right. Why don't we want to message Mr. McQueen and let him know that we're running ahead of schedule? I don't see him. Why don't we take a 10-minute break? Reconvene at 2:30. We're still running ahead of schedule. Or we could have our discussion about application at 2:30 and then do Three Rivers back on schedule at 3. Why don't we do that? So we'll slide that application discussion in there and selection process discussion.
Hello? Hello?
seem like they got together. That's
So, yeah, they're on the right track. They're just gonna have to get the growth up. They, you know, it's more of a stable management support organization behind them.
What's it called again?
K-12 or my
Yeah.
Aurora Institute.
Is our presenter here, or did he?
No, but we're ready to start the conversation. As we're thinking about the application process for next year, I wanted to run some ideas by people about how we might improve the process to make it, I guess I would say, more strategic. And I think I'm just kind of a type of person that is constantly trying to make little improvements and tweaks to things as you go through them. And I think, the application process is something that takes a lot of our time. And I think every year I'm kind of like, well, just think of, after we get through it, kind of start thinking, how could we structure it a little bit differently? A couple of things. One, it seems like we're not going to return to the days of getting 70 to 80 applications. Maybe now that I've said that, that'll happen, but I just don't see it happening.
I think you're right.
I think 20 to 30 is much more kind of realistic. So I think that can help us kind of plan our work. If we operate with, that general thought, I think we can kind of plan our workload. And a couple of problems, I guess I'll name some of the problems that, to me, I think are worth kind of exploring, attempting to solve in the process. Are one, in this with the clarification interviews, I feel like sometimes we're ready to conduct an actual interview, and we end up having a kind of like halt the process when we have the people here and we have the information. And in conversations with Joe and Dave, and we just kind of were asking ourselves, like, well, why, the clarification, for those of you that were not here, the clarification interview evolved out of a process where we had these subcommittees, and we actually rejected applications without a clarification, and then there was basically pressure pushed back from those applicants where they said, they were rejecting us without us even getting to respond to some of the questions that they had. So then we were required to give the applicants an opportunity to respond. They don't necessarily have to be clarification, quote unquote clarification. We could, just applicants that qualify as complete need an opportunity to respond to us before being rejected, basically. So I would like to think about how can we, so this is on the kind of interview side of things, and there's a couple buckets that and I'll just kind of talk for a little while to get all this out of my head. But I would like us to think, how can we maybe think about that set of the interview process? How can we make that more efficient? Because it feels somewhat inefficient. Because it feels like we bring these people here, we basically do an interview that's like maybe 10 minutes, maybe 30, and then we have to basically go over and do a whole nother interview. So that's one issue. Another issue is it is a lot of work for board members to read these applications outside of being here. I feel like after Stephen let me know, I think we're 7 years in at this point, but I feel like I've gotten very efficient at drilling down on key pieces and doing it even at times without doing a ton of prep work. But I feel like that's not necessarily true for people that are new to the board. I think there's a learning curve there. Also, I just think it's a lot to ask us to kind of do a lot of that work outside of the meeting. This is analogous to one way we're thinking about teacher planning at my school where teachers are spending a lot more time doing what we call intellectual prep of the lesson, where they're meeting to talk. They actually have the plans already, but they're taking time together to internalize the plan, look at the standard, talk about what anticipated misconceptions are and how they're going to monitor for those. And I kind of had the thought, like, what if we had a work day immediately after that, so this would be after the applications are due and have been reviewed by the external reviewers, but it would not be an interview time. It would be a time where we would have 1 or 2 days where basically we would say, you don't have to like read these applications beforehand. We're going to come together. We'll have a protocol where we're going to read these applications as a group, and we'd have the external evaluators either in person or on the phone, and we would basically say, okay, I know not everybody reads at the same pace, but basically, all right, whoever's the kind of facilitator for this app, okay, this person can present, like, here's like all right, I'm going to read the key point, here's the key mission, vision, values. All right, now everybody take 15 minutes. We're going to read through the ed plan. Let's jot some questions that we have, All right, 15 minutes. Let's go through the governance section, 15 minutes, like basically a working session where we work together through the app. So basically, by the time those 2 days are over, we've read all the apps. We've all like internalized the basic ideas behind the key strengths and weaknesses. And you don't have to, like, we're not expected to read these things outside of another time, outside of this meeting. And we'd have to be very disciplined and efficient about it, but depending on the number of apps that we have, I feel like it would be possible. So that's another idea. And the other piece was around so part of that, the problem that we're trying to solve there is just like, I think there is this issue of, 1, accountability for making sure everybody's read, 2, just you all, like, us having time to really devote to this out. I mean, it's just hard, like, okay, I'm usually like Saturday night, all right, it's app reading time, like, then I'm telling you, I start to get tired 4 apps in, and it's like, so I think, just basically saying we're protecting this time for us to do this work together. And I think we'd all actually learn more through that process, but we don't have the pressure of having the applicants here where they're kind of like, what are they saying? And we would also have the benefit of we could potentially have external evaluators on the phone who we could they could be part of the dialogue. So that's kind of, the other problem is I think there is an issue with applicants not having enough time when they are approved to open their schools, quite honestly, because we're ahead of the schedule, and these folks are, this year they'll probably get approved in March, which is really exciting, right? I mean, that would be their final approval. So that's probably the first time that's happened. I think, and I don't feel like that's enough time, because the reality is you're recruiting students in January. Like the ramp up time is right. Is that right?
Yeah.
I mean, even if you're on the regular timeline, right? So we were talking about, let's move the deadline. Like, why does the deadline have to be? We're kind of on this school calendar. We're like, summer's over, now there's the deadline. Like, let's put the deadline in March, and then we can get external evaluators reviewing the apps. We can kind of shift our timeline to where we could come up with a new timeline where we work backwards from the time that we want the state board to approve, which I would say could be January. So we would say state board approval in January, which means we bring them to them in December. That might mean that we'd have interviews over the summer, but for me as a school leader, I actually have way more time over the summer. I know some of us also operating on a school schedule, we have more time in the summer. So that was it, with the hope of basically trying to give the applicants another 6 months of planning time. Because my other thought was like, I would like there to be a 2-year ramp to opening. But I think that would require more work and procedural changes. Whereas if we just said, we're just going to shift the deadline, get the state board to approve it, we could kind of, obviously we couldn't post the application. I think that would be for next year, but we can move it up to June. There's no reason we couldn't move it to June. Especially for some of these folks, look, we had I think 3 or 2 of the schools that we approved this time are NHA schools. Like, we've seen that app before. Like, it's not like they're gonna, if they're going to put in an app, they're going to be able to put it in whenever we tell them to put it in. So I think I would like to find a way to give, particularly for schools that are more independent and that need more time to ramp up, and then we're seeing more and more people having delays because of facility issues. If we could give people a longer on-ramp, I would like to, think about how could we restructure our schedule, maybe spend a little, it might mean that we might have to have, I don't think we have a July meeting, we might have to have a July meeting.
Then we might not have a January meeting.
Exactly.
I mean,
exactly. We shift when the month off that we take. So those are kind of three things that came up. Like one, basically moving to a round one, round two, and interview scheme where possibly we could have the golden buzzer. I don't know if any of you guys watch America's Got Talent. My kids and I love that show. Where you just send them right through.
This is so good. You don't have to come
Just,
back
you're
around.
done. But honestly, we could say your whole board needs to be here for round one. There's a possibility that you're fast tracked to, you're finally approved at this meeting. Like if the application
Don't
is,
use the word fast track.
yeah, not fast track, but that's or we say round one and then we decide whether you're invited to round two, and then maybe if the application is very strong, it's like a abbreviated round two, but we're not kind of putting these labels of clarification and interview on the two rounds.
And there's been a lot of times after the clarification, I'm like, we're going to waste an hour because we are going to approve this school. I mean,
Right.
it's just the application is that solid, the board is that solid. I mean, we're going to sit here for
Clarification
another
lasts
hour
5
and talk
minutes
about it.
because there was nothing to
Right.
clarify.
But we had
'cause it was
to
great.
schedule it. We had to build it in the agenda. So
Yeah, so I think I like that, especially at phase one, phase two, interview one, interview two, and if you're good enough at interview one, we can just say you're good to go.
Thumbs up, yeah.
yeah.
I tend to agree with you, but I think I'm harkening back to whenever it was November, December, where we had an applicant. I think it was one from Chatham that looked really, really solid, and then when you asked them the question about to explain the curriculum plan, and it was like,
We would see that.
right
in the
away.
first round.
Yeah,
We would
and-
not
but
have
it's
gotten
because
that.
we
would have
didn't,
not have gotten that in the
need clarification on it during the
Yeah.
So we
clarification.
didn't
I
ask
think
in the
just
first-
we would
yeah.
have asked it at the first one otherwise, I think.
Right. It would require more preparation if we're, in I wouldn't say that necessarily the objective is to get everybody to where we're able to make a decision in the first round, but I think it would require us, I kind of think about these ideas of going hand in hand with like potentially having a work session where we delve into all the apps prior to the round one interviews, so that we're all pretty much, because part of the problem in the clarification is you only have half the board that's really paid any attention. The rest of us are over here doing email, while the one half of the board is doing clarification interviews, right? So I think it would probably be more efficient to just let's get us all up to speed on all the apps, and then have that round one interview with the understanding and maybe we can say we need an hour with this group or we need 30 minutes more with this. I don't know.
As we're going
Yeah,
through
maybe
the app.
we could decide this is a really strong app. We think we're only going to need 30 based on scheduling. I don't know. I think trying to shift from this clarification and full interview just to round one and final or whatever.
What if after we did the applications, as went through them as a group, we decided then, these people need a clarification, these people can go straight to interview?
That would be another
Based
way to
on-
do it. Yeah.
Based on, if we don't really have clarification questions, then let's just bring them for interview. If we really have clarification questions, then do a clarification.
That's a good idea. So we could say you have to have a round one, or you're just, you're moved to a round two. Maybe it's a board that we know before they're doing a replication, that we feel strong about it. We think we could bypass it because it's not there. It's the people that were rejected without the clarification that were the problem. People never had an issue who got an interview.
And got a school.
Everyone's going to have a round one interview. That's our old clarification. The difference, I think, is to have that working group, like a day where we're all talking about the applications and maybe even ranking based on feedback from the outside evaluators what to expect in that first round interview.
Well, and what Cheryl's saying is if there was an applicant that was really strong in the work session, we could just bypass they could skip round one altogether if we don't feel like we need to see them.
Would we run into the risk, though, that, I mean, it's possible, is it not possible that I could have submitted an application and by the time it's on our desk to review, there might have been some changes on, I'm thinking like changes in board members or that may or may not.
Possible.
I think we could just have everybody come for round one, and
That's
then
what I'm thinking,
we
Stephen,
can
yes.
just approve it,
Right.
and then say we don't need you for round two.
Right.
But if you only schedule 30 minutes, then you may not have enough time to do, for even the strong one, to do the full interview.
Yeah.
No, we're talking 45 minutes to an hour.
For
each,
everybody.
for
Maybe
everybody.
moving it to 45 and 45, which maybe that's not more efficient. Like we'd have to play out. It might be useful to like look at the most recent applicant pool and see what a hypothetical schedule would be. But
I like the idea of being able to either eliminate a round for the stronger apps, whether it's round one or round two, because that just wastes a lot of our time and their time of having to travel up here. I'd also like, because when we split the apps between two different committees, I think if we do it all together, we're gonna all be on the same page when we come to the first interview, which I think will make it much more efficient also.
And we're more likely to have more unanimous votes too, because we will have really talked it out in advance and all be looking for the answers to the same questions.
yeah, I mean, I know that the work session would be potentially a lot of work, but what I'm saying is let's just don't do any work outside of the meeting. Just come to the meeting ready, roll up your sleeves and we're just gonna read. We're gonna spend a day, and it can be broadcast. I mean, it's a public meeting, so if I was an applicant, I'd obviously be listening to that conversation.
Well, because they're gonna get the summary of it, summary anyway, because that's the questions.
But I think that honestly, it would probably make the discussion more efficient because they're gonna come ready to respond to what issues that we've surfaced. I think it would take 2 days to get through all of it. I mean, let's say we have.
Depends on how many.
That might take more than 2 days, I think.
Yeah, depends on how many.
I think it would depend on how efficient we are too.
But I think the efficiencies will come too during the interviews, because like you said, they're already gonna know their questions ahead of time. They can kind of just answer them, and then based on their answer, it may generate more questions, but then it may not. It may satisfy our questions. And I think it'll just be more organized.
I just know for me, even feeling like, and part of it is I end up, leaning on, oh, I've done this before, and that's not always a good strategy. And I think if I knew I was going to have to come here and I'd have time to read before they're here, like that would be good, because it's like they open the portal and you're like, all right, I got to go in here. I don't know. I don't know if maybe y'all have read every app top to bottom, but my thought is that no.
Well, and
that's
I
not
have the
the case.
sense
It's
too
too
that
much.
I feel like sometimes I end up reading apps twice.
Yes.
Because it's you read it when it's your subcommittee, then it's 2 months down the road before we interview. Now you got to read it again when we're all doing it. I'd like to only read them one time. That would make my life better.
Yeah, I think if we did kind of a group read together, or kind of go through a protocol, and then we could I feel like I'd be able to open it up 2 months later and feel really, remember pretty quickly what all is.
It's also helpful too, like for the people who are better at the operation stuff and understand the budget stuff. Sometimes when I hear one of them say something at the interview, that's the first time I even realized that there was a problem. Whereas if we had been reading it together, that would have got picked up early.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we could even in the work session divide up and say, okay, you read ed plan, you read governance, and then 15 minutes skim the whole thing. Okay, now you go deep in governance, I'll look in ed plan, and then we'll just talk about it and if the evaluators are there and they've read it, I think that'd be beneficial too. Okay, so other thoughts?
Now, we can't move the deadlines until the next cycle, right?
We could move it back to June, can't we?
We can move it to June.
Can we say that June is when everything's due? And we've been doing what,
early enough.
September?
September.
Yeah.
March,
This
April,
year
April, maybe
we
into
had
June.
it to
That's 3 months.
end of June for accelerated and the end of July for regular ones.
So we did already.
We moved it up 30 days. We're gonna try and move it up again another 30 days.
We're keeping the
this
numbers
new
low.
schedule, we would have to do it the year after next, where we would, the applications would probably have to be due, like, will they be open January and February?
Yeah.
I don't think we can do that. Obviously, we can't do it now.
Can't do it now because we're halfway through February, but I mean,
Right.
yeah, but I think we can go ahead and I think what we've discussed is what we need to do for the application review, and the way we do the interviews and everything. And so, if the minutes are real good, without me having to state everything, I would move well, maybe it would be easier if we had OCS kind of put it into a calendar of how it would work,
Yeah.
and then we could vote on it next time.
Well, and I would think we
Because-
would want to also, well, the only thing is we'd want the application deadline, we want to get that approved. Does that need to be approved by the state board? So
Yes,
we'd
sir.
want to vote on that
We were
right
gonna bring
now.
that to you next month for discussion, as far as the timeline in the rubric, and then take it to the state board in
April.
They're gonna run it in May.
Wouldn't we want to expedite that if we're going to post it in June? Wouldn't we want to go ahead and get it on their desk?
What about the date for the due date for the application? Do you want us to go ahead? And
Yeah, I feel like we could approve
Do
that
that.
now, and you could just send it to them for next month. Action on first read. I mean, Deanna will give us that. It's just the posting date of the
Yeah,
application,
they,
right?
that's fine, we give them enough notice, we'll see.
I mean,
June
because
30th?
then what we could do is in April we could present the timeline for the next year too, so that they're basically approving. So we're like
I'd
a
like to do
year
that in
out
two-
ahead.
I'd like to do that in 2 steps if we could.
Yeah.
Let's get next year's timeline approved, and then have a little
Following
time
year.
to discuss that, and
Discuss it.
get
Yeah.
it to them in a couple months, yeah.
Okay.
Was June 30th a reasonable application deadline with the window May and June, if we get it approved early enough? So applications open May 1 and due June 30th. And then July, the outside evaluators could do their work. We'd be ready for a breakout group in August.
Do you want us to just vote on it next time and go ahead and start prepping Deanna that it needs to be action on first read? Okay.
So not vote on it now, Dave.
Yeah.
If you're an experienced charter school management company, it won't be as much of a problem as if you're.
An independent.
Yeah, if you're an
That's why we
independent
need to
school.
get the word out sooner rather than later. That's the key.
It was what you said. It was July this year. You said it was July.
No, I believe it was,
End of June, end
I
of
think it
July.
was the, yeah, the end of June. I think it went into July, I'd have to go back. and
The
see.
application deadline was that?
I think that was for replications, accelerations, and
Acceleration.
fast tracks.
opened June 3rd, and fast track was due July 29th, and traditional was due August 26th.
Yeah. So we want to move it up pretty significantly.
Another 30 days.
June 30th. Go for it.
We're just gonna have to get it approved. We're gonna have to notify everybody. Well, upsides on our website, but I'll see what,
Yeah,
I'll
that-
talk to
that-
Deanna about getting it on.
I mean, we could even if we did July 30th, that'd be a month ahead of where it
Well,
was.
that takes out that summer time to get folks together to do that outside review. Is I think July is a great time for the outside evaluators who aren't in school session to spend the time going through.
Yeah. No, I agree.
So I would prefer that we try to bring something to the state board next month so we can get the word out as quickly as possible that the new window is May 1 to June 30th. And
So we're talking about doing the work session in August?
yeah, which is school opening.
I open the second week in August.
I think, or September. I mean, we could do the work day in September, or we can move the date of our meeting in August further. Well, we could,
Yeah, other people open later.
Yeah. August is not a good time, but that's okay because they could have 2 months of evaluation, and then we could just come. September would be a work session meeting. October would be renewals. Or October's would be
It's gonna be
renewals
a
and
long
interviews.
time. October, November, December give you only 3 months to do 2 rounds of interviews.
Well, I don't think it's realistic that, I mean, I think maybe the goal this year would be,
January.
yeah, January or February. I
Would
mean,
be
even to replicate where we are this year would be good. And then the next year, when we can have the application due way ahead,
In the
then we
spring.
could really have it stamped and sealed to the state board for them to vote in January, final vote in January or December. Because, I mean, again, we want to also plan for eventualities with the state board sending someone back to us for us to vote again. So we need to kind of build that potential.
This year, we took it to the state board in February, right?
Yeah, this was first.
So for next cycles, we take it to them in January.
January.
Right.
Yeah, and then the next year we take it to them in December.
In December.
I really want to try to give these applicants more time. Okay, so do we want to try to get the June 30 date to the state board next month?
How long is the
I think-
application window usually?
I think let me talk to Deanna. I would prefer for us to go through the process as an office, sitting down with a timeline and let you approve it in March, let them approve it in April, action on first read. I need to talk to Deanna about it.
Okay.
Possibility, but I would rather you vote on the exact plan. Sounds like right now you could be voting on the parameters, which.
Well, and if it's something that y'all have ready in the next week or so, I mean,
Yeah,
we
we
can
can do a
always have
phone
a
call.
call meeting.
Yeah, we could do a call.
Just to, just because, and we can let the state board know too, the reason we want action on first read is because we want to get notice to the potential applicants as quickly as possible. So, but I mean, if it's
It's something
something where
like
y'all don't think you
timeline.
can have it ready, then that's,
Okay.
And you got a new application guy, work him hard.
And then it seems like consensus among the board is you like the idea of having a work session, 2-day work session, and then and I know these I'm guessing, but I think with Rita and Jeanette, I think being new to the board, I think they would appreciate that as well.
Excuse me. The 2 days don't necessarily have to be back to back, but our July meeting is always in conjunction with the association's July meeting, which is at the end of July, so we try to do something.
Yeah, attach it on
That's
to
a pretty
that.
light
July.
thing. We do it at that time, or do one day.
That's fine for me, because that's when our school opens. That's our first week.
Yeah, I mean, we're not gonna be able to, I think we can maybe next month look at what the timelines would be. Again, even if we did it in
September.
September, August, I think.
We cannot, when did we start the review, bringing applicants in? October?
September.
So you need to be ready to see these apps
September.
September.
They're not
So
due
we
till
could
the
do it
end
in
of
August.
June.
August is tough for school leaders.
Yeah.
Maybe
Well, why don't we maybe we look at you create a timeline and then we think about when this meeting, when these dates could be.
Began in September this year.
We began interviews, fast track or accelerated.
Accelerated first.
Okay.
Clarification, Mr. Snyder, if they did this a work session, that has to be a public meeting because they're all together, correct?
Just to piggyback on that, I mean, depending on how you all wanted to divvy up perhaps some, I recognize there's a desire to avoid some homework here and actually build consensus within a working session. That working session would need to be public. However, if you had certain expertise on the board to look at, say, for example, facilities issues, you could have a small work group, a subcommittee, if you will, go through the applications, look at just facility issues, or have, a small subcommittee of the board look at academic issues and perhaps help facilitate your work session by doling out a little bit of homework before. Those kinds of meetings would be not necessarily triggering public meetings laws.
Yeah. and I don't think it's as much even avoiding homework as ensuring the motivation is to, for me, I think is to ensure that we're all doing the work together on the same page. We're all accountable to do. There's just something different about you're showing up to a meeting to do the work together. I mean, it's the same reason we have planning meetings with our teachers, because it's just a lot different when they're at home and they're just. Okay. All right, so your team will work something up, and then we can talk about on the call whether or not we want to try to do a meeting or something like that. And we'll tentatively plan on the kind of round 1, round 2, try to figure out how to organize that. Okay, great. I saw Mr. McQueen in the background there and Dr. Holland. It is 3:02, so we're right back on schedule with Three Rivers.
Dr. Holland, if you hear Joe's on that. Dr. Holland, you may be able. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Good afternoon. Yeah. Sorry we weren't here earlier. I understand you were calling us around 2:15 or so. We were.
No, you're fine.
All right.
It actually worked out well for our schedule.
Very good, very good. Thank you. So we're here to make our regular presentation to the board about the progress being had at Three Rivers Academy. And in my notes that we submitted earlier, there may be some questions left. I brought Dr. Holland and some of our staff from Torchlight that's assisting Dr. Holland with what we're going forward doing academically this year.
Let me ask you a quick question.
Yes, sir.
So, Global Education Resources is the EMO that's partnered with Three Rivers Academy.
That is correct, yes, sir.
But on February 4th, was administratively dissolved for failure to file an annual report with the Secretary of State.
I saw that. That was just something that was overlooked. It was something we'll reinstate.
Okay, so
we're not.
so you are planning on reinstating it, because I know we didn't see an amendment request. I didn't know if you were thinking about moving the EMO or what, but.
No, sir.
So you're just gonna, okay.
Yes, sir. That's all we're going to do. We're just going to open it up and reinstate it. It's just something that was overlooked.
Okay.
I want to say at the onset, Stephen, that our audit is late. The audit is complete. In fact, I have a draft of it. I left it in the car. I can bring it up. I'll send it over to Dave. We have the same auditor, Daryl Keller, for Torchlight, whose audit is also late. Nothing to do with Daryl so much. He's a fantastic auditor. The board loves him. We just signed a new contract with him. He had a few health issues earlier on, but then that kind of threw us off, and so that's kind of where we were. But this is the first time our audit's been late in 10 years. So,
How's the audit look? I don't know, it's just a draft, but.
yes, the audit's fine. We ended up with a $25,000 surplus. And some of that is in spite of some of the funds we did not receive for our special ed money. Our 060 money was not received because of just some technical concerns with the assumption that kind of thing was going on. But something we're working through. We're going to be meeting with those department heads to discuss how we go forward and to retrieve those funds from last year and to get us up to speed for this year's application. I wanted Dr. Holland just to speak a little bit about the education plan and what we're doing there and her expertise. Now, Dr. Holland is an elected official. I think you're serving on a school board. Was that right? You were serving on a school board. Which school board was that? Hereford County School Board. Former principal for the district. Held so many positions. You're welcome to ask her about it or about her resume. And she's been doing a fantastic job helping us keep the students in the building, discipline, keeping oversight with teaching staff and the overall progress of the school. So, Dr. Holland might say what we're doing here.
Good afternoon to everyone.
afternoon.
Three Rivers Academy is located in Powellsville, North Carolina. We have approximately 6 teachers, and we're doing okay right now. When you're in a very, very rural area, we do not have the luxuries of businesses making contributions to our school. However, we don't linger on excuses. We just press forward and move on with what we have. With our teachers this year, we started in September giving them staff development because we really need to hit the ground running in order to be proficient for the EOG in May. We started with our professional development with test scores. We had our testing coordinator to come and give us all the strengths as well as the weaknesses in order for us to move on. We came up with a rubric within our building where we took a look at all of the test scores from 2018-2019 school year. And we looked at the strengths and we looked at the weaknesses as to where we need to go, where do we need to go from here. We looked at our students and we did an individual chart on each student for their strengths and the weaknesses. And we looked at our standards and we required the teachers' lesson plans to reflect those standards in order to bring up our test scores. We meet weekly, every Tuesday, and in our staff meetings, we go over all of the standards that K2 have taught, 3, 4 have taught, 5th and 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teachers have taught. We look at the lesson plans on Sunday afternoon. From 1 until 6, we evaluate all of the lesson plans. We give the teachers feedback on the lesson plans. There are 2 or 3 different other pieces like attendance for staff, which we have very little for our teachers. We don't even have a substitute list because our teachers are out very, very seldom. For our students, we have approximately 5 to 7 students absent on a daily basis. And this time of the year, that's due to sickness, due to the flu season or the cold season. We bring in parents when we do have a child that's absent frequently, and we ask the parent to come in and pick up the homework in order that our children do not get behind in the subject areas. I can go on, but at this time, I'll pause for questions.
Did you give the NC check-ins in January?
Excuse me?
Did you give the NC check-ins in January? It said
Yes,
board
we
meeting.
did the NC check-in number 2.
How was the data?
The reading was very good. We need some improvement in the math area.
Do you know what the reading was?
We had a few students who scored the 91 percentile, and we had quite a few, about 18 to 20, in 80 percentile or more. And we gave incentives for those.
I need some help here, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman. I'm looking at the summary that we have, and it says that 0 students scored proficient on the 3rd grade BOG. What, help me make that correlation
So
between.
that, I mean, well, I mean, yeah, how many, I mean, you're talking about, I mean, that sounds about right. I mean, you have, how many students in grade 3? 6 students. So out of those 6 students, none of them were proficient on the beginning of grade assessment.
It's the first time they test. The BOG
Yeah.
scores generally are not good. And
They're
the good
usually
news
low.
about that is that means you get good growth by the end.
So it's not the end of the world if those numbers are low on the front end.
So there is a plan to, I'm assuming, to deal with that. You look at me like maybe, maybe not.
I mean, it's kind of what she's alluding to, what the Dr. Holland, is it Dr. Holland?
Yes.
What Dr. Holland is talking about in terms of, so in understanding this, we used, so 80% or greater on the NC check-in to advantage students' likely proficiency. On the NC check-in, 7 of 49 grade 4 to 8 students scoring greater than 80% in reading. Is that what you said? Check-in 0 of 53 students, 80% in math. Okay.
Is this check-in 1 or 2?
This
Two.
is check-in 2.
Check-in 2.
This is check-in 2.
What was the, do you have the average? What was the average? On the check-in? Just out of curiosity.
Check-in group proficient.
It's all right.
You don't require 80% to be proficient on the check-in.
What's that?
Well, that's telling us how many kids were at 80%.
Yeah, that's why I
But
asked for the
that
average.
doesn't tell you proficiency because not every grade requires 80%.
Right.
Which is something that
It's
we,
also, nobody actually knows what equals proficiency on the NC check-in. I haven't,
Right, which is what I was trying to figure out,
I mean, it's not, I mean, they try to tell you up and down it's not a predictor of the EOG, but I mean, all of us are trying to use it to predict the EOG.
Okay, for grade 3,
Why are you doing it?
the percent is 43.
It's not that.
I don't know. It's,
Grade
they tell you.
5,
But it's like,
32.7%. Grade 6, 27.0%.
this is reading or math?
Excuse me.
Reading or math?
This is in mathematics, 27.0% for 6th grade.
Do you know how?
Mathematics again for grade 7, 27.0%. Grade 8 math, 22.0%. Okay, for the reading, grade 4, 55.7%. Grade 5, 58.8%. Grade 5 reading, 67.7%. Reading grade 6, 56.7%. Reading, 54.2%. Grade 7, 63.5%. And 8th grade, 40.6%.
And that's 80% or better, or that's
No, that's the average. That's gotta be the average.
That's the average.
that's the class average? Those were the class averages?
Excuse me?
Those were the class averages?
Yes.
Okay. Do you not have 4th graders? Because you didn't do 4th grade math or 4th grade reading.
I thought you said it at the beginning.
I think I left that. I gave you the 4th grade reading was 55.7%.
It's not. I mean, everybody's reading scores seem to be up. I mean, the good thing is there's so few students. If you move just a few students, it'll make a big difference in your score. The bad thing is that there's so few students that if you don't move those students, it'll make a big difference in your scores.
Right, because these
So
are
it's
very
kind-
small classes.
Yeah,
right.
so it could be good or bad. It's just-
That is true.
You
it's
gotta
one of
move a
those
couple
things.
too.
All right, and could you remind me who these, are you all staff at teachers?
yes,
Oh,
two
it's Torchlight.
top performing teachers. Ms. Forsythe, I think, she teaches all the math at the middle school. I think her test scores overall, we had about 70% passing last year. And then Ms. Clemenson teaches 5th grade for us at Torchlight, and overall, Ms. Clemenson, I don't know what, they were high. Yeah, like 80% of her students passed all 3 subjects. So they were there last week after the NC check-in. We met with Dr. Holland visited all the classrooms. Two other teachers were with them. Made some suggestions and come up with some strategies with Dr. Holland that we'll be using going forward as we now shift gears a little and concentrate on EOG test results.
What were their names again?
What are their names
Email?
again?
You
No,
want
no,
to
he
email?
wants to take. Come on, Miss Forsythe. Can you come on? Miss Forsythe. Ingrid Forsythe.
Really, Mr. Chairman, really?
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Is that what we're doing now?
Good afternoon.
Yeah, I mean that sounds like a smart strategy to have the strongest Torchlight teachers. What would you say were the gaps that you saw, the strengths and weaknesses that?
So, starting with the strengths, the class sizes were ideal for more focused and individualized instruction. Some of the weaknesses was just having everyone pacing and being on the standard. So looking forward and still looking backward at the same time. So based on the data, because data is going to instruct what we do going forward. So based on the NC check-ins, the plan is to remediate based on how the students perform on the NC check-ins, and then to teach those standards that will come on the new NC check-in 3. So this will happen simultaneously where remediation is happening, in addition to the new standards to be addressed will also be taught in those blocks. So that is the game plan. Also, based on successes that I've had at Torchlight and our strategies that we use there, exit tickets will be used on a daily basis, and this will be pulled from the database SchoolNet, which will be standard aligned so that students will see where they are, they'll get immediate feedback, and then incentives will be provided so as to motivate these students and to get them moving forward.
Yeah, good.
Ms.
That
Clemens?
sounds like a good. When in doubt, ask the teachers. They'll tell you what to do.
Good afternoon. So in order to ensure that we achieve growth for Three Rivers in the coming school year, the coming end of grade exams, not to repeat what Mrs. Forsythe just mentioned, but to also highlight what Mr. Quigley said, that the class sizes are so small that it can go either way. So what we'll be doing, in addition to remediating based on standards, tests, and based on test scores, we'll also be implementing a teacher coaching program, in which, in this program, we intend to standardize procedures with matching the procedures that now hold at Torchlight with Three Rivers. And some of these procedures including testing strategies, reflecting anchor chart, reflecting standards that are being taught, basics such as I-CAN statements that should be posted in each classroom, and as Mrs. Forsythe mentioned, exit tickets in order to test understanding, comprehension of a standard taught each day. We'll also be allowing the data to speak. And during our weekly planning meeting, as Dr. Holland mentioned, meetings are held each Tuesday. During those planning meetings, data will be discussed, and the steps forward, where do we go from here, will be discussed. There are students who are in a particular grade level who have gaps from the previous grade level. So these will be addressed in remediation programs for each grade level. So we're looking at a holistic approach. As Mrs. Forsythe mentioned, we'll be going backwards and forwards at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any financial concerns? Just ask FBS real quick on this school.
Well, the fact that the audit is overdue, obviously, but there was a notice of financial noncompliance disciplinary status issued, I think last fall, for failure to maintain ADM. And because of the assumption, I think 19 was the first, school business decided to treat it as a new school for the purpose of audit. They were under the old school identity. It was on financial noncompliance for financial solvency issues. And until we see the 19 audit for Three Rivers, we have no idea, actually.
Well, there is you will have that this afternoon in just a few moments. In fact, I can have Barb send it to you shortly, Dave. We have end up with a $25,000 surplus overall for this school year. And that's, as we pointed out, there were some funds that we were not able to capture or bring over because of just a bit of the kind of understanding who we are. Are we the new Three Rivers, or are we still the old Heritage Collegiate? And so that's presented a bit of a challenge kind of going back and forth, so.
That was a question that I had, because in some of the comments about academics, it talks about being in your first year. So I wasn't sure if that number followed you from Heritage, because if you're continuing low performing, there's part of your plan that suggests you want to move back and have 345 students. And if you're continuing low performing, you can only increase by 20% of what your current year 20-day ADM was. And so I'm just trying to understand, are you considered in your first year from DPI, or you have a new number, or does your data suggest otherwise?
Should be their second year, correct?
Just second year. Yes, we'd be in our second
But you're
year.
continuing performing, and that's usually 3 years of data, and you've got data for
Yes.
multiple years, which I think is Heritage.
Maybe we're a little ambitious, but we requested to move the school from Powellsville back to its original location. At that point, it had some 300 and plus odd students at one time. So maybe that's where that came from. And I'm sure there's variances that we may be able to, come back before this board to appeal that if we're able to accomplish that. We hope we are. And we don't plan to be low performing for 2 years in a row. That was last year.
I think the kind of where we left the last time we checked in on Three Rivers is basically meet growth or
Yes, absolutely.
wrap it up, which you said you'd be the
first one to go.
First one
to sign off.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we wouldn't have to vote.
Absolutely.
So I think that's kind of where we are.
Are you relying on any federal dollars this year?
Well, yes. I mean, we're going to need those federal dollars
Well, apparently nobody at the school is registered for access to the federal programs, so you can't apply for anything. Do you have that resolved?
Yeah, we have access to those. I'd have to talk to my accounting folks who was actually handling that, but there was an issue in terms of getting access. Just because of the changeover, but I think that's been resolved. Ms. Mitchell's got access to just about everything, doesn't she? Yeah. We think that's all been resolved, but we'll look into that right
Please.
now, Joe. For yes.
Yeah. Leanne.
I'm sorry, Three Rivers does not appear to have an active SAM registration, which is required for federal grant funds. I believe the school did have a DUNS number last time I checked, but there's no SAM registration.
SAM registration.
Cannot apply for federal funds.
I don't think that we have applied, so we have to find out what the story is with that, because we have applied for and we have a.
Right, but there's a hold. You can't receive federal funds, and there is an active hold on the school for federal funds because of the lack of SAM registration.
Okay. Yes. Well, will be helpful. That's not a big hurdle. We can overcome that. Getting our number, and I'll have to verify that. I really don't know.
Yeah,
because I know we applied last year.
Yeah, you gotta have that. That's a
Yes.
super random thing that you have to have in that registry completed. So.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, I like the plan of having the high performing teachers from Torchlight spend some time up there and coach
Yes.
those teachers. I think that's smart.
Absolutely.
Replicate what's working there. We've talked about that before.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? We'll probably see you again.
Sure, hope so.
Probably April.
Sure, no problem.
We'll
Hear
let you
that,
know.
ladies? This will be after the NC check-in.
Yeah.
Too. That'd be very good.
Cool. All right.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Special guest back
Is that him?
That's
Okay.
it.
DPI thing.
Yeah, it's Robert.
Is a federal requirement that.
Looks like the only thing we still need to discuss is,
Yeah, you're gonna touch on these two
next
items here.
month's meeting is 1 day or 2 day?
I think we could do a 1 day, if you guys are good with it. It looks like right now we're doing the timeline, the charter school timeline application proposal. And then we'll have a couple more school presentations, our normal monthly updates. And I think that's all. Sometimes, Mr. Snyder, ethics training takes place around this time, so you let me know.
Do that.
Didn't
Hold
we
on to your
just do
seats,
that?
ladies and gentlemen, for some ethics training. We will get you in between the navigational beacons where you already are. It'll be exciting.
So, yeah, I know
I thought
everyone's
you
looking
usually
forward
do
to
that
that.
when we go for the association.
I know we did one in the summer. There
Yeah,
may be
sometimes
another
it's
one.
summer.
Is this an annual thing?
I'm just,
Yeah.
Well, certainly you should watch out for your statements of
That thing that
economic
comes in.
interest are going to come due on tax day here in April. So go ahead and knock those out. You may have a requirement to check in and get your training done with the Ethics Commission if you haven't gotten that done. I've not received sort of the update from them for this round, but keep your eyes on your emails for those items.
I promise that I will not say a word during the ethics training again this year.
Mr.
That
Walker,
was
you
very
can
good
speak
last
however you
year.
like.
It was very good last year.
That won't happen, we know that.
And then, the only really update we got from State Board is they did, pass your renewal recommendations except for Kestrel Heights, and they gave them a 5-year. But everything, they did approve everything else. And this time I'd like to thank Coop for doing a great job
Yes.
with renewals.
Great job.
Absolutely.
A lot of work. This is
Great.
kind of the firing line between the office, CSAB, and the State Board, but she navigated that very, very well.
No,
I think we have a special guest.
Yeah, is that Mr. Pondicio back
It
there?
is.
yes, it is.
Oh, wow.
Like that.
All right. You wanna,
Come on up.
I'm a super fan, so I don't know, in this kind of, in the world that those of us that pay a lot of attention to things like Success Academies, I loved your book. Coming to the talk tonight, very excited about it, and yeah, so excited that you're here to share with the charter community and others in North Carolina. So welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I'm not a stranger to North Carolina. My daughter is a Tar Heel, and actually, I planned this trip a few months ago, before I knew she was going to leave school early. She's back in New York. I'm here by myself. I hate to say this, but I planned this trip because I wanted to come down this past weekend and see UNC beat Duke.
That was rough.
Almost.
So hopefully the rest of my trip will work out better than my original reason for planning it. But thanks for having me here.
That was rough. Yeah, well, we're excited. It certainly excited to hear more. I guess I don't want to take much from your talk, but maybe you could just share for our board, many of us who are running schools ourselves or connected, maybe you could share, just because I don't know if anybody will be able to go, but kind of one of your biggest takeaways in your research and writing about what could those of us who are authorizing schools kind of learn about, or what knowledge could you share with us?
Sure. Yeah, putting me on the spot to boil it down to
sorry.
No, that's
Sorry.
fine. I should have my talking points down by now. The book came out a few months ago. So the brief backstory in the book: I'm from New York. I'm a charter school guy. I teach to this day, at least part-time, at a charter school in New York City called Democracy Prep. Teach high school civics 1 day a week. I work full-time for an outfit called the Thomas B. Fordham Institute, which is an education policy think tank based in Washington, even though I live in New York. So I write a lot about education, and what got me interested in Success Academy, which is a chain of, or a CMO in New York City with about 50 schools or so. They do something that, to my knowledge, no other charter school CMO in the country has managed to do, which is, I mean, from memory, so forgive me if I've got this data wrong, I think last year they had about 40 schools. The worst one, the lowest performing one, had 85% of the kids at or above grade level. The worst one had 92% of the children at or above grade level, and mostly above level 4, as we would say, in New York, in math. So it's incumbent upon guys like me to go to a place like that and say, what have you all figured out that the rest of us have not figured out? So I spent a year embedded in one of their elementary schools, literally across the street from where I was a student teacher several years ago, and in the same South Bronx school district where I taught 5th grade for 5 years. So the book is an attempt to really unpack what it is that they have figured out. I mean, full disclosure, toward the end of the book, I asked Eva Moskowitz, the founder of Success Academy, how much of this program do you think could translate to other schools, K-12 at large? Her answer was all of it. My answer as an analyst is less than that, but there are some lessons. Principally, I also say in the book that I walked in expecting to write a book about curriculum and instruction, because that tends to be what I write about. This makes me an oddball in the charter world, right? A lot of us are concerned with things like chartering and data assessment, teacher quality. I'm the guy who talks about, well, what do the kids do all day? So that's why I wanted to spend my time embedded in that book, is to see what the kids do all day. It ended up being more a book about school culture at the end of the day than about curriculum and instruction. But curriculum and instruction plays a role. So this is all a long preamble to say, okay, what do I think does apply to charter schools at large? The way they've structured the job of the teacher, primarily. They make curricular decisions that might not necessarily be the ones that I would make. As Mr. Maimoni knows, I'm a big fan of E.D. Hirsch and core knowledge. And as I would say about Success Academy, it's not a core knowledge school. Hirsch would feel comfortable there. But they make some decisions in terms of literacy and math that are perfectly fine. But what's important is they have a curriculum. So the job of the teacher is focused on delivering that curriculum. It's focused on examining student work. It's focused on intellectual preparation. You all probably know the RAND data that shows that literally almost every teacher in America spends some number of hours each week on places like Pinterest and Teachers Pay Teacher, looking for material. Well, that's time that's not going into studying student work. That's not going into less intellectual preparation. That's not going into developing relationships with kids and families and whatnot. So the argument that I would make, or what I believe that I'm seeing there, is that, look, this is an organization that has sensibly organized the job of the teacher around the curriculum. Now, that may be some confirmation bias on my part, being a curriculum guy, but I think it is quite powerful, because I'm bearing the lead here somewhat, they are able to get extraordinarily strong and consistent results with relatively inexperienced teachers. There's a lot of skill and will, but this is not the story that we told 20 years ago about bright, shiny Ivy League grads, Teach for America, the best and the brightest, as it were. They are getting these results with, again, very dedicated and very hardworking young people, but who come out of the same colleges of education for the most part that the teachers across the street in the regular schools have. So I think that's a big part of their magic. And it's not magic, I should say that as well. It's a lot of effort. But the piece of it that charter school detractors, frankly, have focused on is that there is an unabashed bit of what I term parental self-selection involved. In other words, yes, it's lotteried admissions, but then they do put any number of hurdles in front of families. You have to come to a welcome meeting, confirm your interest, uniform fittings, et cetera, and this seems to observably favor families that have more parental bandwidth, families that are married, employed, ambitious for their kids, et cetera. It's not every family, but it's a far larger number, a critical mass, if you like, as compared to the district school that I taught some years ago. So, while that may not be the most charter-friendly story, as it were, I think it's important to be clear-eyed about this, and wish they are. But I can't say this enough. and this is the real big news of the book, I suppose. Starting with those self-selected families, they get results that far outpace the gifted and talented programs in New York City, where the kids are hand-selected. And if this were a standalone school district, they would be by far New York State's highest performing school district, including school districts where there are multi-million-dollar homes and whatnot. And so the picking and choosing is done by real estate agents, as it were. So it's a complicated story, but there are some lessons I think we can learn.
For the benefit of
Focus on the ed plan, guys. The ed plan and the application matters.
For the benefit of our many thousands that are listening into this live stream,
no.
please shamefully promote your great book, Robert.
The book is excellent. As I said,
really
I
is.
read
It's
it.
excellent.
It reads like a novel.
Appreciate it.
I read it in 2 days over the weekend. It is really it's an excellent book, and I think it pushes on and asks a lot of the important questions that we as charter folks and really anyone in public education needs to be asking. So I'm really grateful for just that you even took the time to write it, because everyone wants to know. Those of us that are geeks about this stuff want to know what's going on in the inside of Success Academy.
Yeah, well, my parting argument would be we should be geeks about what's happening inside of classrooms and not just the structures
That's
around
right.
it, because
That's right.
That's where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. But I appreciate the opportunity to see y'all.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
All right.
I'll make another motion. I know, Dave, you had in here a thing about committee work with a March meeting and reporting to the board. That may have been in regards to the email that I had sent earlier. And what I'd like to do, with the chair's permission, is to, before our March meeting, is to have a called meeting of the policy committee. On the policy committee to go over revisions to the charter agreement. And so work with Eric as well to have him on the line during that as we go through it. And we have confirmed that the charter agreement does not have to go through the rules review process, right?
I agree with that.
Okay, then we've got some free reign that we can do to make some changes and try to delineate a little bit better what is the school's responsibility, what is the state board's responsibility, what is our responsibility, and to try to, continue in what we wanted to do in the past, which is to make sure that charter schools have as much free range as possible within the bounds of the law and policy. So,
All right.
with that, I'll move we adjourn.
So move.
All in favor?
Aye. So I'll send like a little poll around to see when would be the best for
Okay.
everybody.
A doodle poll, we're gonna send
Maybe a doodle poll. I don't know, I got a different one the other day. It wasn't a doodle.
Next month.
That's so, they're so easy.
See you next month. You good? We'll see you soon.
Oh, I thought it was.
Whatever she's
That's the best
done before. I'm sure she's done it before.